Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm in conversation with a very accomplished leader from Ipoh, Malaysia, Ernest Balasingam. Ernest, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Ernest is the founder of Back2Basics Consultants in Malaysia. He's a senior partner of Messrs. Gibb Co Advocates and Solicitors, again in Malaysia. He manages one of the largest cycle charities in Southeast Asia, and he's a triathlete. So before we talk of Back2Basics, when I was reading about you, there's a phrase which said you believe in commitment does not need an alarm clock. Help me understand this.
I always believe that, I use this as a lot of my friends who take up cycling and they say, hey, Ernest, give me a call at 5:30 in the morning and make sure I'm up. And I said, no, after a while, I said, why do I need to wake you up? If you are committed enough, you'd be up at 5:30 to do it, So I always say that this extends into other areas of your life as well. If you are committed, you have no issue. But a trouble with a lot of us is our commitment can wane after some time in something. But I always say that what we really should be doing is when we start something or bring people into something, you have to give them a reason to believe in something, albeit a betterment, their health or whatever it is. It gives them a reason to believe. And for that reason, that's how I came up with that phrase, commitment doesn't need an alarm clock.
That's fantastic. When I read about this, I was reminded of my mother, many, many years ago. When we were children, she would always tell us, if you want to wake up, tell your pillow when you go to sleep. Wake me up at this time and your pillow will wake you up. And it always worked.
Yes.
So Ernest, now let's move to Back2Basics Consultants.
Yes.
Tell me about the scope of services you offer.
This year, I've managed to secure a partner with me who is very much more into the static aspects of human resources. So now, as of this year, we are able to offer all the aspects of human resources. Previously, I was just purely doing training, and I was doing it on an ad hoc basis. But what we have in Malaysia is the Human Resource Development Fund, which is where all companies with 10 or more employees contribute 1% of their income, not the income, of their gross salaries to this organization, which in turn they use the money that they have in place with the Human Resource Development Fund to use it back to train and upskill their staff. So I was initially doing this through my clients from my legal firm. And then they said, Ernest, we have got all this money in human resources, HRDF. Why don't you go and do our trainings, but claim the money from the fund? So I went through the process. I became a certified trainer way back in 2016 with the Human Resource Development Fund, trained the trainer, TTT. And in 2018, I started Back2Basics. And it's a name that I'm very sort of proud of, because when you form a company, you always say there has to be a reflection of you or whatever. And I said Back2Basics. That means everything I do in life, we always look for the basics. Sometimes, we try to find a bigger solution or whatever, but sometimes the answer is staring us in the face, and we don't see it because we think there's always a better solution elsewhere. So that's how I started Back2Basics. And we started out as a training company from 2020 up to 2020. And when the pandemic hit, there was absolutely no training. So I have my partner now. We offer the broad scope. She handles the static aspects, which is the payroll and all those other things. And I do more of the dynamic aspects. That means if you have a difficult employee and you want them removed, how do we go about it? What is the strategies we use to remove an employee? Because every disciplinary or a performance issue is very unique. There's no blueprint or a template you can fall back on and say, I'm going to use this template to remove this guy, or to work out a agreeable severance.
Very interesting. So, over the years, I have seen outsourcing of the human resources needs is getting larger and larger in a lot of companies. Do you see that as a trend that's going to build more?
I would think it is a very common trend, because what the problem is with the SMEs or the small, medium industries, they can't afford to hire a full-time HR manager, because a good HR manager would cost you anywhere between 8,000 ringgit to 20,000 ringgit. And for a small SME enterprise, you can't do that. So what actually happens is you have an admin manager or somebody or a finance manager wearing that hat of a human resource, doing the human resources, but they are doing more of the more basic stuff, such as, just as payroll and that sort of thing. But when it comes to the dynamic stuff, they are really, really hamstrung in that regard. And, and an SME doesn't want to get embroiled in litigation. So, because one legal suit which goes against them could cause them to go belly up, So I would see outsourcing is the way of the future for the small, medium industries.
Very interesting. And what about the large companies?
The large companies, I think what is really sad, you see, I started out life as a hotelier almost 35 years ago, or 38 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I could tell people I'm a hired man through and through. I have always been I believe in training and being training centric. And within and I always use that as a blueprint model, where you have your chief human resource officer or your HR director, and under him, there is one person who's your personnel manager who handles all the aspects of personnel management, and you have a training manager. And I always believe that is if you're a big organization, you must maintain that, because training shouldn't be a perfunctory exercise. Once the training is done, there should be follow-up. The training manager has to follow up to see whether they have understood, what they have learned, the training competencies, whether it's being implemented department-wide. So that is very, very important. I feel that, organizations should still strive to have the two branches in their organization.
Very interesting. So again, another area of commonality that you have just saying that you said you're a hired man, and for almost 15 or 17 years, I was a diamond category customer of Hyatt.
Right.
For many years. So it's a fantastic change.
Yes. And when young kids tell me, oh, I want to go and become a hotelier and I want to become a chef, and I always tell them, go work for the Hyatt. It's the best learning you can ever do. I became a department manager at 23.
Wow.
And I was kicked into the deep end, and I knew nothing about finances. I knew nothing about managing people, and all the other aspects of administration and management. And I would say 99% of the things I do running my two businesses is what I've learned from the Hyatt.
So, that takes me to my next question. Big organizations like Hyatt have a very, very strong culture.
Yes.
And you work with a lot of SMEs.
Right.
So how does an SME build a strong culture?
I would think it really comes from the CEO, the founder, and they have to develop that culture, because I think with our Asian mentality, especially with mindset, it's always been about bottom line. It's always been about the finances and making sure the books are in the black. But, very little is spent on training. But more importantly, it's employee retention. And it's the biggest problem today is faced by 99% of the companies is employee retention. So I foresee that as the number one culture, that we should all strive to retain our employees.
Interesting. And talking of retention, in a young country like Malaysia, which has got a strong economy, how important or how easy is it to retain employees? I've been reading somewhere that people change jobs very easily.
Yes, people do change jobs very easily because like I said, it always comes down to the retention. And, a lot of companies, even in Malaysia, don't even practice exit interviews when an employee tenders his resignation. There's no exit interview practice, because an exit interview gives you the basis of saying, hey, what am I doing wrong? Why am I losing so many people? Why are people leaving me? That gives you that your answers are all there. That should go up to your MD, to the CEO, to the chairman, and they should be looking at all these things. And that is when they will see things like, oh, we need to be more engaged with our employee. This employee needs more coaching. We need to look at more training. That would be the essence of how you form your own culture in your organization.
Very interesting. So again, since you do a lot of work with SMEs and you advise a lot of them, based on your understanding or experience, what are some of the basic mistakes a lot of SMEs make when it comes to human resources?
They don't spend they always think that, the mindset is, I'm a small company. Why do I need to do training? Why do I need to have a company handbook? Why do I need to have basic policies in? That is the problem I find with a lot of SMEs today, is that they think it's an expensive exercise when really it is not an expensive exercise, It's just getting everybody trained. And, especially if you have a small organization, it's easier where you can sit down with the managing director, you can talk to him and say, okay, what are your problems I'm facing? Okay, we tailor everything accordingly and put the message out to the employees if it's 5, 10, 15.
Interesting. And a follow-up question from that is, while I agree training is important, given what has happened in the pandemic, where work from home has become almost a norm,
yes,
how will training be delivered to people who are working from home?
I've done a couple of online trainings, and personally, I don't enjoy it. I like to be upfront, because especially with human resources, you're able to see a person's face and you're able to gauge if they get the point or they don't get the point. Because as with Malaysia, sometimes English is a handicap and I see things lost in translation. So you would need to actually sit down with people one-on-one and talk to them. Usually when I conduct my training, I use the break time, and I always, out of the corner of my eye, I see somebody struggling. And when we have a coffee break, I go up to them and I say, look, I see you don't understand this. Can I help you with this? And then I speak to them in Malay, and help them out and just explain it to them in that way, so they grasp it. But with online, you can't you can't read these emotions. It's quite hard unless it's a small group, yes. But if it's a big group, very important. It's impossible. And I'm really looking forward to going back to the classroom.
Absolutely, I agree. So, Ernest, one more question relating to Back to Basics before I move to the next segment.
Right.
Given all your vast experience with the Hyatt and your own consulting work, you have worked with people of different generations. What is it like to manage the millennials and the Gen Zs?
To be honest, I haven't per se managed a lot of millennials, but I do have young lawyers working for me, and that's a good enough gauge. And like I say, people always have this preconception of what millennials, they're always hopping jobs, and at the end of the day, they don't look at job satisfaction. They always look at the bottom line, the paycheck, and they don't look at personal growth. I personally think that's total absolute rubbish. And I think at the end of the day, a millennial is who he is because it's the way he's brought up, and it's how they approach life and how they approach the job. And that's what I believe in, if he's been accelerated through his education, where after all, which is a very common thing, an Asian tiger trend, tiger mother trend, so as they call it, where after O levels, they accelerate the kid into doing his foundation or A levels or whatever. And from there, it's straight into university. And what does that do to a child? A child develops a skill set. He doesn't develop his mindset. And you see, the only way we can retain people and keep, the way people work in our organization, they need to have a mindset. I look at a mindset over skill set. I look at 10, 15 resumes a day of people wanting to work with me. All perfect, fantastic. But I always look at the mindset. And that is something which is lacking. And it's no fault of the millennial. It's actually the fault of the parent, I would say, and because of this accelerated education, the child hasn't been able to find his place in the world. That is the sad part. And I sometimes ask these kids, why did you become a lawyer? Oh, my father said it's the best job. It's a secure job, and in fact, I advise people, I said, if you've got a law degree, and if you find the bar exams too difficult, it's not the end of the world. There are other jobs you can do,
Very well said. So Ernest, now let's move to your passion, which is your cycling charity.
Yes.
What is a cycling charity and how does it work?
I started out in 2011 when a friend of mine invited me and says, hey, come on, there's this charity going on in Thailand. It's 7 days of cycling, 750 kilometers. We raise money to build libraries and equip libraries for the poorer regions in Thailand and schools. So I said, okay, let's go on a cycling holiday. And I went on it. And it opened up so many things to me. It opened my eyes to so many things to me about how much we can do in this world to change lives, to help people improve. So I belong to this German charity called the Tour of Hope. And I did it up until 2015. And then 2016, they sort of lost their direction. And in 2015, I took my son with me for his maiden tour, where we wrote the epic from Bangkok to Phuket. And in 2016, I was tossing with with this, and he told me, he says, why don't you start your own charity? He says, people will come. And, and I said, yeah. And I spoke to a few people, my core people, the Malaysians and the core Europeans. And I said, look, I'm leaving. I'm starting my own charity. Would you like to be part of it? And we started with 20. 2018, we had 30 people. 2019, I think we had about 25 people. And it's been going on for 4 years. Wow. And what we do is everyone just cycles. We raise money to help poor schools with computer literacy. We donate computers. We then try and install the computers with English learning programs. And and we are very blessed because we have two oil and gas companies that support us every year. And they do give us a lot of laptops, and which we distribute among these schools. And if you'd like to know the name of our charity, it's called AWOL Riders.
AWOL.
AWOL, as in absent without leave, but ours is a week of laughter.
Okay.
And that's what we are.
That's a lovely word, play on words. Very nice. Okay.
Yes. Okay. And I always tell...
Why have you selected Thailand as the country? Why not so many other countries?
I know there are so many other countries, but number one is because of infrastructure. They have a very good cycling. They have a very good infrastructure for cycle touring. The hotels are very accommodative. The roads are good, and the appeal of Thailand is there, because I say we're not per se confined to Malaysian riders per se. We have riders from 7 nations, stemming from right through from Norway to Norway, Belgium, Germany, those sort of countries. And people look forward to coming. I mean, you have people who make the trek from all the way from North Carolina, which is 36 hours. So I must be doing something right if they block their diaries and if they come every year.
Absolutely. This is fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So Ernest, I'm now going to move to the last segment of our conversation, which are some questions for you personally. All our viewers and listeners love to listen to a few questions about my guest.
Right.
So my first question to you is that in such an amazing career, what would you say are three key milestones in your life or your career?
Um, uh, Honestly, they have got nothing to do with my career.
Mm-hmm.
I would, because what it has done, it has helped, in fact, reinforce my career and build my career.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, I would say it's parenthood without a doubt.
Yeah.
That is of course a life-changing and paradigm shifting in situation in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I was a, I was a, I was very committed triathlete for the longest time.
Okay.
And after I started my first tour in 2011, that sort of changed my approach to it, and it sort of diluted my interest in it, because, like I said, it's how you do things, and it diluted my interest because I saw a greater good out of doing cycling charity. And I think the third milestone, which I always tell people, is, I think, and you may have read my article, is 2015, when I took my son on his first tour. And that showed me a lot of things on how powerful it is when you take people out of their comfort zone. And I see it in him, and how he worked. He has never ridden a 750 kilometers in a week, but he did it. But that has in many ways impacted his life. It has changed his life, And I said, these are the milestones. And I tell people, that's what we need to do with our children today, is take them out of their comfort zones and make them do something, Practice a gap year, believe in a gap year, give them a year. If they want two, believe me, they will never be handicapped, or you always think, oh, my child will be, his education, he may not go back to education and that sort of thing. I tell you, it is absolute nonsense. My son is living proof, and he had a 3-year gap year because he really couldn't decide what to do with his life,
Fantastic.
And it's understanding your children. I mean, boys are totally different from girls. And my daughter also took a gap year, but she arrived at a decision much quicker than him,
Very interesting.
Yes.
So moving on, for someone who spent so many years in the hotel industry, someone who has, built an amazing legal practice, someone who's a, well acknowledged trainer, what are some of the core values you believe in?
My core values, I would honestly say, is building the people around you in whatever aspect, albeit work, with imparting the law or whatever it is. And even in cycling, I call myself, the people I cycle with, I call us disabled cyclists, because one friend had a heart attack. I am myself on blood thinners because I suffer from deep vein thrombosis. And I said, we are all here to support people, to make them realize that they are capable of that much more than they actually are. And that's what that is to be my core belief in things.
Okay. So I have time for 2 more questions for you. My next question is, who or what inspires you to keep pushing yourself?
What inspires me is human endeavor. In any situation, people who can look at every situation and just laugh at it, laughing at the eye of the storm, and just pushing their way through. And that's what inspires me more than anything else.
Very interesting.
If people wise, I always tell people, I'm a diehard Liverpool fan for 47 years now. It's my life, my passion. I was born with the tattoo on my arm. And I said, it's always been the Liverpool managers that I always look. I read all their books to gain my own wisdom, because I feel that, something resonates with you. You are in that quest and that thirst for that knowledge, and that's how I would say that people who inspire me.
Very interesting. And my last question to you, and this is for all the people who will listen to our conversation, especially the young people. You already told me that, for the young people, you say take a gap year. But what would your advice be to a young manager or young individual who's starting off on her or his journey in life?
My advice is this is what I've practiced for the past 37 years.
Mm-hmm.
When I walked into Hyatt to take up my first position in the Hyatt, I was 23 years old and I was a full department head. And my general manager said to me, Ernest, when you walk into my door with a problem, make sure you have 3 solutions to that problem. Mm-hmm. He says, it doesn't matter whether it's what your solution is. The point is you have applied your mind to it. And when you have applied your mind to it, you believe in that solution which you have put forward to me. It may not be the best, but the point is that you have thought it out, because the sphere of your experience and my experience is totally different. I've got 30 years on you and you've got 1 year under your belt. And I said, it's, and I tell that to my lawyers as well, because sometimes, back to what I'm saying, the answer is there. It may be basic, but we're all looking for something, the wow factor in an answer, So that is the most important thing. And I always tell these to HR managers as well. Always stand on what you believe in, because and a lot of them, and the sadly is with this new generation, and because of Google, there's very little resource searching. Everyone is like saying, oh, can you give me a template letter? Can you give me something to help me draft this policy of working from home? But they don't apply their mind to it. And when things go wrong, what are they going to say? Oh, no, I asked another HR manager and they said, this is how I do it. But no two company is the same.
Very well said.
Very well said. So I always say, always stand on what you believe.
Wonderful. Ernest, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for taking me down your amazing journey. And I'm so impressed at the way how you so effortlessly have moved between a professional manager, between a lawyer and a trainer. Thank you again for all your lessons.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the time and the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.